In the heart of the Grand Canyon, a place revered for its natural beauty and geological wonders, something extraordinary lurked beneath the surface. A hidden realm, untouched for centuries, bearing silent testament to a civilization long forgotten.
In 1909, a front-page story claimed a massive underground citadel was found in the Grand Canyon, filled with mummies, statues, and hieroglyphs. Then the story died. The Smithsonian denied everything. They said the explorer, G.E. Kincaid, never existed. But a paper trail has surfaced, and it points to a crate of artifacts shipped from Arizona to D.C. that same year. If this crate is real, it proves an advanced civilization lived here long before Columbus. The crate is found. The question is, do we have the guts to open it? Breaking the century of silence. So here's the deal. The Smithsonian Institution is basically the attic of America. It holds millions of artifacts, from space shuttles to dinosaur fossils. But there is a rumor that has persisted for over 100 years. A rumor about a specific section of the archives that doesn't appear on any tour map. They call it the Black Vault, and for the longest time, people thought it was just a conspiracy theory. But recently, the chatter has gotten loud, extremely loud. Reports are circulating that a specific crate, one that was marked as destroyed in the early 1900s, has been physically located. It wasn't destroyed, it was just misplaced, or maybe it was hidden on purpose. And what's inside isn't just dusty old pottery, it is allegedly a set of human remains that defy all logic. We are talking about a skull twice the size of a normal human. Femurs that are so long, the person they belong to would have stood at least 8 feet tall. Everyone's obsessed with the idea of secrets, right? But this is different. This isn't just a secret, it's a potential rewrite of history. The story goes that a low-level archivist stumbled upon a shipping manifest from 1902. It referenced a shipment of anomalous osteological specimens from the Midwest burial mounds. That creates a paper trail. But here is where it gets crazy. As soon as this crate was allegedly identified, the security protocols changed. Usually, researchers can request access to old bones. Not this time. Access is restricted. The catch is, they aren't saying the crate is empty. They aren't saying it's boring, they are saying it's sensitive. Since when are old bones sensitive? To understand why this crate is such a big deal, we have to look at what it represents. It represents the giant theory. The idea is that thousands of years ago, North America was inhabited by a race of humans who were significantly larger, stronger, and more advanced than the Native American tribes that came after them. If you open that crate and pull out a 9-foot skeleton, you confirm that theory instantly. And that scares the establishment. Why? Because it means the history books are wrong. It means the timeline of human evolution in the Americas is wrong. The buzz online is that this crate contains the Albemarle specimens. These were bones found in a mound in the late 1800s that were shipped to D.C. and then vanished. If this crate has actually been found, it's the smoking gun. It's the physical proof that the old newspaper clippings weren't lying. But don't get too excited yet. The Smithsonian is a fortress, and they are very good at keeping their doors locked. The big question is, why now? Why did this story surface right now? Some say it's a planned leak. Others say it's a mistake. But the timing is suspicious. We are living in an era where information travels instantly. You can't hide a giant skeleton in a basement forever. Think about the logistics of this. A crate doesn't just disappear, it has to be moved. It has to be cataloged. Someone has to sign for it. For over a century, we have been told that these bones were just cow bones misidentified by stupid farmers. But farmers know what a cow looks like. They know what a human looks like. When a farmer in 1890 says he found a human skull that fits over his head like a helmet, he isn't confusing it with a cow. He is seeing something that shouldn't exist. The crate represents the vindication of all those farmers. It represents the truth that was stolen from the public. And the fact that access is restricted tells you everything you need to know. If it was just a cow bone, they would let us see it. They would laugh and say, "Look, you idiots, it's a cow." But they aren't laughing. They are barring the doors. They are scrubbing the digital records. That is the behavior of someone with something to hide. The crate is just the tip of the iceberg, but wait until you see the numbers from the 1800s. The 19th century bone rush. Let's rewind a bit. To understand the panic over this lost crate, you have to understand what was happening in America in the 1800s. It was the Wild West of archaeology. Settlers were moving across the Midwest into Ohio, Kentucky, and West Virginia. And everywhere they went, they found these massive dirt mounds. These weren't just piles of dirt. They were complex geometric shapes, circles, squares, octagons. Some were shaped like animals, like the Serpent Mound in Ohio. And when the early settlers dug into these mounds, they found things. Crazy things. It wasn't just arrowheads. They found metal armor. They found complex jewelry, and they found skeletons. Lots of them. But they weren't normal. Here is a stat that will blow your mind. Between 1850 and 1920, there were over 1,000 reports in local and national newspapers describing the discovery of giant skeletons. We aren't talking about some random blog. We are talking about the major newspapers of the day. In 1881, a major newspaper reported a find in Pennsylvania. The headline? 2 very tall skeletons. The article detailed bones that would have belonged to men over 7 feet tall. Another report from West Virginia described a skeleton found in a mound that was 7 feet 8 inches high. That is massive. That's NBA center size, but with a much heavier build. These weren't skinny basketball players. They were described as having massive jaws and double rows of teeth. And get this, even Abraham Lincoln knew about it. In 1848, Lincoln visited Niagara Falls. He was so moved by the sight that he wrote some notes. He wrote, "The eyes of that species of extinct giants, whose bones fill the mounds of America, have gazed on Niagara as ours do now." Lincoln wasn't a conspiracy theorist. He was stating a fact that everyone accepted at the time. The mounds were filled with giant bones. It was common knowledge. So, what happened? That's the million-dollar question. If there were thousands of these skeletons, where are they? They should be in museums. They should be in glass cases. This is where the vacuum cleaner theory comes in. As the Smithsonian expanded in the late 1800s, they sent agents out to these dig sites. The locals would find a giant skeleton. The Smithsonian agent would show up, crate it up, and ship it back to Washington. They promised to study it and display it. But once those crates left the town, they were never seen again. They went into the black hole of the archives. This context is crucial. The crate that has supposedly been found recently isn't a random box. It's likely one of these shipments. It's a time capsule from an era where finding a 7-footer was a Tuesday occurrence. The sheer volume of these reports makes it hard to dismiss them all as hoaxes. Sure, farmers lie, local papers exaggerate to sell copies, but 1,000 reports across different states, from different decades, that's a pattern. And the descriptions are eerily consistent. Massive skulls, thick bones, buried with copper ornaments. This suggests a distinct culture, a culture that has been erased from the textbooks. Imagine the scene. A farmer is plowing his field in Ohio. His blade hits something hard. He digs. He finds a stone slab underneath a skeleton. He calls the sheriff. The sheriff calls the local doctor. The doctor measures the skeleton. It's 8 feet tall. The whole town comes out to see it. It's the biggest thing to happen in years. Then a week later, a man in a suit arrives from Washington. He shows a badge. He takes the bones. He puts them in a crate. He says, "Thank you for your service to science." And he leaves. The farmer never hears from him again. The bones are never mentioned in any journal. It's like it never happened. That is the story of American archaeology. It is a story of erasure. And the crate that has just been found is likely one of those stolen moments of history waiting to be reclaimed. The bones are one thing, but the red hair they found in Nevada changes. The missing skulls of Nevada. Now let's get into the really wild stuff. If the Midwest mounds were weird, Nevada is a straight-up horror movie. In 1911, a couple of guano miners, guys digging for bat poop to sell as fertilizer, stumbled into a cave near Lovelock, Nevada. They started digging and they found artifacts, lots of them. But as they went deeper, they found mummies. These weren't your standard mummies. The miners reported finding skeletons that were wrapped in tule matting. Some of them were normal size, but others were huge. We are talking estimates of 8 feet tall. But the craziest detail, they had red hair. Now you might be thinking, hair changes color when it rots. Sure, that happens. Black hair can turn rusty over centuries. But the local Paiute Indians said, no, that's not rot, that's the citadel. According to Paiute legend, which had been passed down for generations, they were at war with a race of giants. These giants were cannibals. They were vicious. They had red hair and pale skin. The legends say the Paiutes eventually trapped the giants in this very cave, piled brush at the entrance, and set it on fire. They burned them alive. So the miners find the cave, they find the layer of ash from the fire, they find the broken arrows, and they find the red-haired mummies. It matches the legend perfectly. So where are the bodies? The Smithsonian and other museums came in to excavate. They took everything, thousands of baskets, duck decoys, and yes, the bones. But if you go to the museum today, you won't see the 8-foot giants. You'll see the baskets. There are reports, persistent whispers from locals, that the giant skulls were kept in a back room of the Humboldt Museum for years. People claim they saw them. They describe jaws that were so big you could fit them over your own head like a helmet. Then the Smithsonian got involved. The skulls were allegedly crated up and shipped east, and just like the mound builders, they vanished. One skull, known as the Lovelock skull, was photographed. It looks massive compared to a normal human skull. Skeptics say it's just perspective, believers say it's proof. But here is the catch. Why would the Paiutes make up a story about red-haired giants that perfectly matches the physical remains found in the cave? And why does the Smithsonian refuse to do DNA testing on the hair that remains? If that lost crate contains a skull with red hair from Nevada, it proves the Native American legends were historical fact. It proves there was another race here, a race that was hunted down and destroyed. This ties into a global phenomenon. Red-haired giants are reported in Peru and New Zealand and in the Bible. It's a pattern the establishment hates because it suggests early transoceanic travel. It suggests the Americas were a melting pot of different species and races long before Columbus. Think about the fear those tribes must have felt, living in the desert hunted by 8-foot cannibals. It sounds like a fantasy novel, but the oral history is specific. They didn't say monsters, they said people. People who were bigger, meaner, and looked different. The discovery of the duck decoys in the cave, beautifully made, perfectly preserved, shows that whoever lived there was intelligent. They weren't animals, they were skilled. This makes the cannibalism part even scarier. Intelligent, tool-using giants who viewed normal humans as food. If the Smithsonian has the bones of a citadel warrior in that crate, they aren't just hiding a skeleton. They are hiding the evidence of an ancient war. A war for survival between two different species of human. And the fact that we won doesn't mean we should erase the losers from history. If you think Nevada is scary, wait until you see what they found on an island in California. A huckster or a prophet. So let's move from the desert to the beach. Catalina Island off the coast of California. It's a tourist paradise today. But in the 1920s, it was the personal playground of a man named Ralph Glidden. Glidden was an amateur archaeologist, and let's be honest, a bit of a grave robber. He was hired by the High Foundation, which is now part of the Smithsonian, by the way, to dig up Indian burial sites. And boy, did he dig. Glidden claimed he excavated over 800 grave sites. He found thousands of skeletons, but then he went rogue. The money from the museum dried up, so he decided to open his own Museum of the Macabre on the island. He built a museum where the windows were lined with toe bones. The shelves were held up by leg bones. It was a house of horrors. But here is the wild part. Glidden claimed that among the thousands of normal skeletons, he found a distinct group. He called them a fair-skinned race of giants. He claimed he found skeletons of men who were 7 feet, 8 feet, and even 9 feet tall. He claimed he found a royal princess buried in a massive urn, holding the rim with her hands, surrounded by the skeletons of 64 children. It sounds like a total fabrication, right? A guy trying to sell tickets. And that's what history has decided. They say Glidden was a fraud. They say he bought bones from elsewhere and glued them together. But there are photos. Grainy, black and white photos of Glidden standing next to skeletons that look impossibly long. In one photo, he is next to a skeleton where the shin bone alone looks as long as Gliddon's entire leg, and here's where the Smithsonian connection comes back. Before he went crazy with his bone museum, Gliddon shipped hundreds of crates to the High Foundation in New York. That collection was eventually absorbed by the Smithsonian. So the question is, are Gliddon's giants in the crate? Critics say Gliddon was a liar. But what if he was a liar who told the truth about one thing? What if he found the same Sea-to-Ka-type people on the islands? The Channel Islands have a history of isolation. It's the perfect place for a relic population to survive. If the crate contains the Catalina giants, it validates Gliddon. It turns a known hoaxer into the most important archaeologist of the 20th century. And it makes the Smithsonian look like they covered up a massacre. Because Gliddon didn't just find bones, he found signs of violence. Arrows embedded in ribs, skulls crushed. Just like Lovelock Cave, it looks like these giants were wiped out in a war. Imagine the ecosystem of that island. You have these massive people living in isolation. Maybe they were the last of their kind. Driven off the mainland by the tribes, they retreated to the islands. They lived there for centuries, growing tall on a diet of seafood and isolation. Then the end came. Maybe a raid from the mainland, maybe disease, but Gliddon found them all buried together. Layers of history. The urn of the princess is the most haunting detail. Why bury a woman in a massive urn? It suggests a culture we know nothing about, a culture with complex rituals. And where is that urn now? It was too big to lose. It has to be somewhere. The rumors say that when the High Foundation packed up Gliddon's collection, they marked the giant crates for special storage. They knew what they had. They knew it didn't fit the timeline, so they made it disappear. The islands are weird, but the biggest cover-up might be hidden in the Grand Canyon, the Forbidden Zone. Okay, this is the big one. This is the holy grail of Smithsonian conspiracy theories. The Grand Canyon. On April 5, 1909, a newspaper called the Phoenix Gazette ran a front-page story that should have changed the world. The headline read, "Explorations in Grand Canyon." The article detailed a journey by an explorer named G.E. Kincaid. He claimed to be working for the Smithsonian. He was floating down the Colorado River when he spotted a cave entrance high up on the cliff wall. He climbed up, and what he found wasn't just a cave, it was a citadel. Kincaid described a massive underground city carved into the rock. He said there were hundreds of rooms. He found a cross hall hundreds of feet long. He found statues that looked like Buddha. He found hieroglyphs that looked Egyptian. And yes, he found mummies. He described them as being wrapped in dark fabric. He said they were all male, and he said the cavern could house 50,000 people. The article claimed the Smithsonian was sending a team to excavate. It mentioned a Professor S.A. Jordan who was leading the project. Then, silence. Complete, total silence. If you ask the Smithsonian today, they will tell you, "We have no record of G.E. Kincaid. We have no record of Professor Jordan." That story is a hoax. But here's the catch. If it's a hoax, why is that specific area of the Grand Canyon off limits? There are vast sections of the canyon where hiking is illegal, and if you look at a map, the formations in that area have very specific names. The Isis Temple, the Tower of Set, the Osiris Temple, the Horus Temple. The official explanation is that early geologists just liked Egyptian names. Sure, maybe, but isn't it a little weird that the exact place where Kincaid claimed to find an Egyptian city is surrounded by peaks named after Egyptian gods? The theory is that the lost crate contains the artifacts Kincaid brought back. The copper tools, the urns, the photographs. If Kincaid was real, it means ancient Egyptians or Asians crossed the Pacific and built a massive colony in Arizona 3,000 years ago. That destroys the Columbus discovered America narrative. It destroys the primitive native narrative. It implies a global, connected ancient world. Some hikers have claimed to find the entrance. They say it's covered by a metal gate now. They say black helicopters patrol the airspace. It sounds crazy, but remember, the Grand Canyon is federal land. It's controlled. Imagine walking into that cave. The air is stale. You light a torch, and suddenly, out of the darkness, a massive statue looms over you. It's sitting cross-legged. It holds a lotus flower. In Arizona, the cognitive dissonance would be enough to break your brain. Kincaid described the granaries, the barracks, the dining halls. This wasn't a temporary camp. It was a city meant to withstand a siege. Who were they hiding from? The giants? Maybe the underground city wasn't built by Egyptians. Maybe it was built by the giants themselves. Or maybe it was built by humans to hide from the giants roaming the surface. The silence from the Smithsonian is deafening. If the story was fake, why not just let people hike there? Why the restrictions? Why the no-fly zones? It feels like they are guarding a tomb. If the crate is opened and it contains a statue of Osiris carved from Arizona sandstone, the game is over. The history of the world gets rewritten overnight. It's not just about history. The biology of these things is terrifying. Why evolution can't explain this? Let's get scientific for a second. Because the most disturbing part of this isn't the location, it's the anatomy. We keep hearing this phrase, double rows of teeth. It appears in the 19th century reports constantly. The skull was equipped with a double row of teeth. Now medically, there is a condition called hyperdontia where you have extra teeth, but usually it's a mess. Teeth growing out of the roof of your mouth. It's painful and chaotic. The reports describe perfectly formed double rows, like a shark. That suggests it wasn't a mutation, it was a genetic trait, a species feature. And then there is the 6 fingers thing. Many Native American petroglyphs depict hands with 6 fingers. The Bible mentions a giant with 6 fingers and 6 toes. If you have a population that is 8 feet tall, has double rows of teeth and 6 fingers, you aren't looking at a Homo sapiens. You are looking at a cousin. This is where the Denisovans come in. We only discovered the Denisovans a few years ago from a pinky bone in a cave in Siberia. We know they had massive teeth. We know they interbred with humans. We know they migrated towards the Americas. Is it possible that the mound builders and the Lovelock giants were a late surviving population of Denisovans, or maybe a hybrid? This would explain why the Smithsonian is so scared. If they admit these bones exist, they have to classify them. And if they classify them as a different species of human that coexisted with us until recently, it raises dark questions. Did we kill them? Did we eat them? Did they eat us? The lost crate could contain the DNA evidence to prove this. Modern genetic sequencing could tell us in a week if these bones are human or other. But the Smithsonian was built on the idea of a linear, clean evolution, a tree with no rogue branches. Giants are a rogue branch. They are a biological nightmare for the standard model. And let's not forget the thick skulls. Reports say the skulls were incredibly thick, sometimes double the thickness of a modern human. That's an archaic trait. That's Neanderthal stuff. But these guys were building cities and wearing copper armor. It's a mix of primitive biology and advanced technology that doesn't make sense. Unless we are missing a huge piece of the puzzle. Think about the caloric needs of an 8-foot human. They would need massive amounts of food. This would make them aggressive. It would make them territorial. It fits the legends of the cannibal giants. They weren't evil. They were just hungry, and we were the prey. If we share DNA with them, and some people believe Rh-negative blood types might be connected to this lineage, then they are part of us. The crate contains our ancestors or our monsters, or both. There was one man who made sure these bones never saw the light of day. The science of denial. Every story needs a villain, and for the giant theory, that villain is Alois Herdlichka. Herdlichka was the curator of physical anthropology at the Smithsonian in the early 1900s. He was a brilliant man, but he was also a tyrant. He had a very specific belief. Humans arrived in the Americas recently, like 3,000 years ago, and they were all the same race. Anyone who argued with him was destroyed. Herdlichka created what researchers call a scientific dictatorship. When people sent in giant bones, Herdlichka was the guy who received them. And he had a standard response. It's a hoax, or it's an abnormally large Indian, or it's a mastodon bone. He refused to accept anything that contradicted his timeline. There are stories, dark stories of Herdlichka taking these anomalous bones and ordering them to be reburied or worse, incinerated. He considered them nuisance data. This aligns with the Powell Doctrine. John Wesley Powell, another Smithsonian bigwig, explicitly stated that for political reasons, the government needed to downplay the achievements of ancient cultures in North America. Why? Because of manifest destiny. If you admit that there was a massive advanced civilization here before the Native Americans, or that the Native Americans wiped out a race of giants, it complicates the white man's burden narrative. It makes the history of the land messy. So the order came down. Simplify it. Herdlichka was the enforcer. He traveled to the Aleutian Islands and dug up thousands of skulls. He was looking for proof of his theory. When he found skulls that were too big or weirdly shaped, he dismissed them as cranial deformation, head binding. He explained away everything. The lost crate is likely a collection that Herdlichka didn't destroy but hid. Maybe he kept the weirdest ones for his own private study, or maybe a subordinate hid them from him to save them from the incinerator. Knowing Herdlichka's reputation, finding this crate is like finding a file marked "Crimes I Committed." It documents the systematic suppression of data. It proves that science wasn't objective. It was a dictatorship. Imagine working for him. You find an amazing artifact. You bring it to his office. He looks at it, sneers, and throws it in the trash. "Doesn't fit the model," he says. You watch a piece of history get destroyed because one man's ego was too big to admit he was wrong. That is the tragedy of the Smithsonian. It wasn't a conspiracy of thousands. It was the dogma of a few powerful men, and we are still living with the consequences of their arrogance today. So what do you think? Is the Smithsonian hiding the lost history of humanity, or was this all just a 100-year-old game of telephone gone wrong? If you had the key to the archives, would you open the crate? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe for more mysteries.